Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Gabi Carachilo and thrilled to be on the virtual stage once again to moderate what I am very excited about, our next fireside chat. And to kick off this event, I wanted to propose a question if you've ever felt the internal tug of war between your career aspirations and family responsibilities. If so, please share that note in the chat. I've been there, and you're not alone. And today's conversation is especially for you. We're incredibly lucky to be joined by Neha Ruch, founder of and CEO of Untitled, and now the brilliant author behind The Power Pause: How to Plan a Career Break After Kids and Come Back Stronger Than Ever. Neha has been a leading voice in redefining what ambition looks like for modern mothers. Her work challenges old narratives, makes space for nuance, and offers practical strategies for those navigating career breaks with confidence. Neha, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, I'm equally delighted to be here. Thank you.
And we already have people commenting that they love your book, so we are with great company. I'd love to start with your personal story. What led you to create Mother Untitled, and what inspired you to write The Power Pause?
So I had my first son on New Year's Day of 2016. And if you can go back in your mind to that period, it was the height of the lean in movement, the height of the girl boss era. And prior to that, I had been on paper having my dream job. I just graduated from Stanford Business School. I had been checking all the boxes to gain a lot of sort of self-worth and belonging in the work I did. And then I had him, and I was rocking with him in the wee hours in the morning. And it's not to say I wasn't sleep deprived and all the things, but there was a sense of peace I think I'd been looking for a long time that I wanted to lean into a little bit. I wanted not only time with him, but I was actually curious about how his little brain was working. And I was interested for the first time to learn. And I hadn't been feeling that way in my career. And I share that because I did choose to downshift and eventually pause to make room for that chapter. But it wasn't because I thought it was the right choice. I ground all of this work in saying that I truly believe there's no one right choice in parenting. There's, in fact, immense research to say whether you work out of the home or in the home or exist in between, your kids are safe and loved as long as they know that they are loved by you. So with all of that said, as soon as I said that I wanted to take my foot off the gas, I started hearing, are you giving up? Are you going to be bored all day? And are you wasting that spot at business school? And, of course, it made me go inward and question a little bit, but I felt very clear on my choice, but very confused as to the mismatch of what I was feeling, which was actually like a lot of interest and excitement about this chapter and a fair amount of confidence that this wasn't a career ender. And I was meeting all these other women by nature of living in New York City. I was meeting these other women who were somewhere in between. They were downshifting into freelance work. They were pausing, but they'd clocked in 10 years in their career. They were interested in what might come next, and none of it matched what I was hearing. And I realized that there was so much great content about the traditional working parent, but it seemed to leave anyone else who was choosing to pause or downshift with very tired tropes and tired ideas of what stay-at-home motherhood looked like. So I started Mother Untitled as a small project alongside my own career pause and grew it over the years. And obviously flash forward to 9 years later and the book and I think culture was ready to receive the message.
You bet. And I think part of one of the key messages I found from the book was the concept of redefining ambition, especially in that chapter or that pause. And I'd love to learn more what ambition looks like for you now and how maybe it's evolved since becoming a parent.
Yeah, I think, we have ascribed a sort of definition, a static definition of ambition and equated it to salary gain and career aspiration. And I remember distinctly, I just had my second. I was at home and just wanted to go to lie down after having her. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I really lacking in ambition that I don't feel like exploring and using this time to move something along? It was when I was fully pausing, when I was just deciding, as opposed to having downshifted to part-time work previously. And I looked up the dictionary definition of ambition, and it was the determination to do things. That's it. with no clarification as to what those things are. And it actually sort of broadened my view to, well, what if, we are going to do a great many things we care about over the long game of life. And maybe we're all just here holding platters, and we're naturally going to shift our attention and our time and our focus to different things. And the real ambition is being able to trust in the long game to methodically move our attention and focus based on our true values, and allow ourselves to grow alongside. And that was a real gift, because I think what it did was it sort of started to make it a little less black and white. And even today, even after the book coming out, and obviously having been able to grow the platform now that my kids are school aged, my day is still, I'm going to hop off this and go get my son. And it's I've leaned into sort of this vast gray area between the black and white ideas of stay at home and working, and the black and white ideas of ambition is meaning to never make room for other things besides career.
I love that. And I love breaking out of the mold that it has to be black and white, and there has to be this one path forward as to what each chapter of life could bring, and having some of the trust in the long game. Individuals' careers are very long, right? There are many, many years that we could be in the workforce in different sorts of capacities, whether that's full-time, part-time, freelance, consulting, a pause, and that can evolve. That can evolve over that period. I'd love to lean into the exact definition, or your definition, of a power pause, and how can it shift the way that we think about stepping away from work, or transitioning back, scaling back after having children?
Well, the power pause was the language I got to when I was sort of overthinking my own chapter of stay-at-home motherhood, which, stay-at-home motherhood, just by sheer sociolinguistics, feels so disempowered, right? It implies stagnant, and it implies shut in, for reasons I get into in the book. We've sort of co-opted all of these old archetypes, including like June Cleaver, the fictional character from the 1950s. And so it doesn't feel very good. Because we're coming in with that societal baggage, as opposed to what it really is, and what I experienced, and I know hundreds of thousands of other women experience, which is a power pause, a time where we are shifting our attention and focus away from paid work for a chapter. And in so doing, we're actually able to expand our interest, expand our sense of self, expand our networks. And ultimately, it helps shape a really powerful return to the paid workforce if we so choose.
I love that concept. And it really, again, helps reframe that conversation. And I'm with you, right? I kind of grew up in this culture that celebrates hustle and speed and achievement and checking the box. And in your book, you do such a great job of reframing a pause as powerful, not passive. And so for those who have not read the book yet but are dialed in, any thoughts or feedback or advice that you'd share on this concept?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's more to this, but I think if the foundational underpinnings of the power pause reframing is that when you choose to pause or shift for family life, you're also allowing yourself to make room for yourself to grow.
Yep.
So I think about this when we're getting our footing, right? Like, you've done all the planning, and now you're getting your footing in this very new stage of life. And oftentimes that's where you hear, especially ambitious women who have been on a very linear path. So the success metrics have been sort of assigned to them. That's where they may say, well, now what? And you feel lost, you feel disoriented, you may feel like you're not moving forward. And two things can happen. Either you can feel lost, or you can very quickly say, well, I guess my success metrics are now my children's happiness and their behavior, which we all know is like a very faulty metric. And so what I offer to women is, well, what if this is actually the moment in time where you get to assign yourself your own most authentic goals and metrics of success? Because the reality is, we have been sort of going through this sycophantic experience of annual reviews and just sort of saying what we needed to say. But this might be the moment where you can say, and if you do nothing else, if you don't get the book, do this one thing: write in great detail who you want to be in 5 years, like your ideal day in 5 years. Who are you spending time with? What are you spending time on? How do you feel in your body? How do you feel in your mind? What's the energy in your home? What's your dynamic like with your kids or your friends? Not because that's going to be who you are tomorrow, but it often reveals your most authentic goals. And goals can sound really hard when you have two very little kids at home. So I'll use my example, right? Think of three buckets: personal, professional, and family goals. I had two very little kids when I was doing this. I had no paid help at that time. And my personal goal was I'm going to work on reactivity because that's something that's challenged every day with these kids. And it's something I deeply want to learn and grow in. I can listen to one podcast every single week because you needed measurable, attainable metrics to make yourself feel like you're moving forward, right? Professional was I'd always wanted to write. I'm going to write 3 blog posts on a free website, which obviously turned into Untitled.com. And on a family goals perspective, I'm going to have a silly household. That's what I envisioned. And so the metric was a light one. It was, I'm going to have a dance party every single morning, right? So you can see how these are like very tiny ways to measure progress, but goals dignify time. And the time is dignified. And for too long, we've ridden off time away from the paid workforce. And what we're offering is actually this can be the way in which you can really grow and explore in your most authentic ways.
I love that exercise. You probably could tell I was taking notes. I hope everybody did as well. But no worries, we're recording today's session if you missed it. But I love that experiment, and I love the fact that you added having a silly household, right? And of course, we can have some of those professional goals in mind, but a dance party, cooking with your kids. A karaoke session, right? Whatever can bring some levity and fun into the household and create those core memories too for your kiddos. That is so enlightening and impactful to think about. I'd love to speak to the folks in our audience who might currently be in the midst of a pause. Mm-hmm. And what practical advice would you offer to them to help stay confident and connected to their identity?
Sure. So I think the first piece is knowing your career pause is not a career ender. I think we've been fed a lot of fear around the fact that if you step away, you never get back in. And there are ways to mitigate that risk. And I encourage women to think about that. Obviously, I talk about them in the book, but there's so many great free resources. There are free resources on our site and on yours. And I think it really relies on this idea that you are accumulating non-traditional skills, right? You are coming into the stage of life and all of that incredible experience that you had before did not evaporate. So when you're going on LinkedIn and you've just resigned, if you were a 10-year marketer, that marketing experience didn't belong to Google, that belonged to you. So figuring out what parts of your prior experience you want to take with you is important. And then realizing that this is actually a stage of life you're layering in a career portfolio, non-traditional experiences. And one thing I always suggest is open a Google Doc or an iPhone Notes page, right? And this is a way in which to do some serious self-study. And it's just chronicling, whenever you think about it, any bullets, like random bullets of what's lighting you up. What interesting activity did you do when you were school, like volunteering at the school or negotiating with your child or helping your partner on their business? Because those random bullets do two things. They, one, tune you into, well, what direction might I be interested in? Because you see a number of women pivot because they're learning, they're gaining perspective, they're exposed to new interests. They want to do work of meaning. It can often shape, well, maybe this is a direction I want to double click on. And then the second piece is, well, maybe when I'm going back and I'm putting together my resume, these are also going to serve as really interesting sub-bullets. All of that non-traditional experience has weight, and oftentimes we don't dignify it with the language. But I use this example of a woman I interviewed down in North Carolina, and she had worked with someone who had organized a bus route for her kids' school. That's it. Like, her kids weren't getting picked up. Seems like something any mom would do, like complained. It ended up being a clue that she was actually really interested in project management. And so as she began her search, she started saying, well, maybe I can take an online certification class in that. Or maybe I can lean into more volunteering opportunities to help scaffold that. And then when she went to write her resume, she took that little bullet in a long list of non-traditional experiences and crafted it as so: implemented highly technical infrastructure change to local organization. Sounds so impressive. And it's like the work that we do behind the scenes that can be reframed as long as we're paying attention to it.
I love that. I love that. It's so important to reflect on some of those non-traditional experiences and have those opportunities and intentional moments of reflection as to what is going to fill your cup as you enter this new chapter. And I've been there, and I think it's allowed me to be even more intentional and engaged and fulfilled in work, knowing that if I'm going to spend time out of the house and away from my children, the work that I want to be doing has to matter, has to be in alignment with what my goals are, and has to be fulfilling in that regard. And it's been powerful. It has been a powerful shift for me. So I appreciate you speaking to that. I also love the concept that a pause is not a career ender. It's not a definitive thing. And so when it comes time to re-enter the workforce, I'd love to share some advice or ways that parents can set themselves up for success, any mindset shift changes or tactics that you have found or those that you've interviewed have found to really work for them.
Yeah, I think the number one thing is lean on your mom friends. Like, we write off mom friends as like, oh, they're just like women at the PTA or the park. This is your network. Like, networking, it comes with that like heavy word that we think it only happens in offices. The most interesting, diverse relationships I cultivated that served my ultimate career were made on playgrounds, right? Because networking is just relationship building, and there is no deeper relationship building than in motherhood. There is an invisible thread that connects us all, right? Low hanging fruit, love your diaper bag, like what pediatrician, and that very quickly goes to, well, how are you feeling? And you might say, I'm actually thinking about going back to work. I don't know where to start. And that person might say, well, like, talk to me about it. I always use this example of Priscilla de Moizon, a woman I interviewed in Northern California, and she did two interesting things. She was feeling disoriented. She found a super connector, those like friends that have all the other friends. And she said yes to the invitations. So she went to this woman's book club, and then she was vulnerable. Not saying she was like crying in the corner, but she said, I'm feeling lost when someone asked. And another woman said, me too. They ended up together meeting on Wednesday afternoons every Wednesday for 2 years for backyard burrito sessions, to be sounding boards to help craft each other's next step. I think we often don't realize that this can be our bridge back. I think there's also, like I said, I think that there's so many incredible opportunities that we overlook, whether we're helping a friend on their business or we're helping out in the school. They might be unpaid, but there was another woman who, had been out of the workforce for quite some time. So she strategically volunteered to test different things she might be interested in. And so, there's a way in which we can use what's available to us, both in network as well as sort of forums to explore, to start to piece together what that next step might be.
Such great advice and such great stories. Thank you so much for sharing those with us, Neha. We are already coming to time. I cannot believe how fast this conversation has flown. So I want to jump to one of my final questions, which is, if you could wave a magic wand and change one misconception about a career pause, what would it be?
That it's a luxury. I think so long we have been fed this idea of like sitting around eating bonbons, and we associate care with being done out of love and with leisure. And I think what's happened then is we end up in situations where women don't, and men who are step into a chapter of at-home parenthood or career break for family life, it's harder for them to advocate that they are actually contributing work of value. And when we do that, then we also empower women to get more help and support, paid and unpaid, because no one should work 24/7 without help. And as soon as we are able to start to find ways to get that support, we can feed it back into ourselves to use a pause as not a life pause, a way in which to actually move yourself forward too.
It's such important feedback. And thank you, Neha, for this incredible conversation. Your message is just so empowering, honest, and frankly, just needed. I highly recommend your book for those who haven't read it yet. We'll drop the link in the chat. And to everyone joining us, please don't go far. Up next, we'll have a session on building inclusive workplaces. So we'll see you back on the virtual stage soon. But Neha, thank you again. It was such a pleasure.
Likewise, thank you.